Hello and welcome to the Bee Formless Flow-Driven CEO podcast. I am welcoming from Nova Scotia. I haven't had anyone from Nova Scotia before. Joseph Onorati. Welcome to the show, Joseph.
Thanks, B. Appreciate it. Good to be here.
Yeah, you said it's freezing cold. It's freezing cold here pretty much too, and we're about to hit summer. So there you go. Like talk about changing like climates and but you said there's a bit of dry snow or something today. So, Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of recently branded, from what I understand, I should say you're the CEO and Chairman of DeFi Development Corp, which has recently been rebranded, which you can share with us. It's a digital asset treasury focused on accumulating and compounding Solana SOL exposure via capital markets, tools, and validator operations. You're leading its pivot from this rebrand, and you were previously Chief Strategy Officer at Kraken. Tell us a little bit about your journey, because I understand you were only appointed this role back in April, um, early April this year, 2025. So it's a new role. So big congratulations. And I guess my question is, did the rebrand happen before you came on board, or did you instrument it when you took on the role?
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Um, yeah, back in January, I guess, I started talking to some of my friends who used to work with me at Kraken about what might happen in like what basically where crypto is going from here, given the changes in U.S. Administration. And one of the things we concluded was that the U.S. public markets would open up for crypto, and we've seen a lot of this happen since, right? Like Circle went public, and there's been an enormous number of new digital asset treasury companies that hold Bitcoin or whatever other asset on their balance sheet come to market since then. And the other was some of the assets that the SEC previously kind of viewed as securities or named as securities in complaints against various crypto businesses would not be securities. And there'd be kind of business implications and opportunities from that. And Solana was one of the tokens that was named in the Coinbase complaint where the SEC filed against Coinbase, um, alleging that Solana was a security. And I think it's clear now that and then really that Solana wasn't a security. But these kind of two things together prompted us to say, okay, we should probably try to do something in the public markets with Solana. One of the ideas that came up was a treasury company, and a treasury company, they're called digital asset treasuries now. It's similar to MicroStrategy or Strategy. So these companies buy a crypto asset and hold it on the balance sheet. It's kind of like an ETF is one way to
Oh,
think about
okay.
it if you're not familiar with the topic
No.
already.
Yeah.
And then they attempt to earn yield on the treasury asset such that instead of you getting like a stagnant amount of the token per share, you grow over time. So MicroStrategy, for example, grew Bitcoin per share by 72%, I think, last year. And my company, DFDV, DeFi Development Corp, attempts to grow SOL per share. And so we actually bought half this company. It was a small NASDAQ listed company focused on real estate um, professional SaaS. Prior to our transaction, we bought over half the company. We appointed ourselves to the board in a way. The board appointed us as because we were the biggest shareholders then, and appointed us as officers of the company. Um, so that's how we facilitated this kind of transaction. Simultaneously, we fundraised into that company to start the Solana Treasury strategy, and then this has kind of become the playbook almost for how these deals happen for other digital asset treasury companies. And there's like 200 of them now, and we were the first non-Bitcoin one in the US.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. And so did you, had this started before you started in the role, or were you part of the big plan? Like
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I made the big plan. Yep, Parker and I are who's now the COO and Chief Investment Officer. Yeah, we got together and bought half this company. We did it ourselves. Yep.
Wow. Huge. Because I said to you before the show, I'm going to ask you questions like how do you ensure that you have that life workflow? And, you've essentially gone in and acquired a company. We'll get to values in a bit, but like there's so much that it's not just from a business perspective, but from a cultural transformational shift, all of that, roles and taking over a board, etc., etc. Like, when you started in this role, was your expectation that this would be as intense as it was? Like, did you know what you were walking into?
Yeah, I've been a founder before, and I mean, this is kind of like being a founder. Um, and yeah, I'd say I expected, I was even looking for kind of what I was walking into. There's still plenty of stuff that's unexpected. Like, we forecasted, like how big the business might get or whatever. And then when it's actually happening, you're like, whoa, this isn't what I expected, even though it's like what I put down on the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's been a good time, I'd say. It's a lot of fun, a lot of adrenaline.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we live for at times, don't we? We live for that adrenaline. Tell us a bit about you when you answered, and I want to come back to everything to do with business as well. When you booked in for the pod, and I asked you what's one unique insight, lived experience when it comes to life, leadership, and/or business, you said writing down personal core values is very powerful. They make goal setting easier and streamline future decision making, resulting in more decisiveness and fulfillment. It feels like that played a big factor also into coming into this role as well, or have you always has that always been a belief for you? Tell us a bit about the response to my question.
Yeah. Uh, when I was, so I was at Kraken right before this, and well, I guess I left Kraken about a year and a half ago, and Kraken's one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges, and I was there for 8.5, 9 years. It's 8.5 years, say. And I joined when there were about 23 people at Kraken. And I don't know, when I left, there was, I don't know, 2000 or something, right? So there's this is kind of enormous growth story for that business, this big scale up. And uh, I I had a great time there. I felt like it was like part of my identity. I almost grew up there, even though I was, I don't know, 30 something when I started working there. And uh, when somewhere along the way, like later in the time there, the company was preparing to go public and, kind of talk about this. The company's not public now, but there's press articles, whatever media out there, quite a bit about Kraken's timeline. And we started to bring in, people who had done it before. And the company kind of got, I'd say, more and more corporate, say, and kind of the ethos that the business had earlier on, I felt like it was kind of losing it. It's like
Yeah.
a identity shift in these businesses as they scale up. I think that's okay. Maybe it just is what happens. But I kind of, I don't know, I had like mild identity crisis, I would say. And so I went through this process. I got a coach to help me. I went through this process to identify what were, kind of core values for me. And of course, I'd done like a long-term goal setting before, and what my bound or barrier or blocker or whatever was, I was like, okay, I want to do like a long-term goal setting thing, and I'd get to it, and then I'd say, okay, I can't like actually write down something hard. I was like, I'm mentally blocked from doing it for some reason. This was a couple of years ago. I said, let me go through the core value process kind of first, and then that can be like a foundation to uh, kind of unlock the goal setting process. And so I went through it. I spent a lot of time on this and, a lot of reflection. And I found the process incredibly valuable, I would
Mm.
say. And now I have uh, core values written up on my wall as I walk in and out of my office, right? I can see them, reminded of them, just kind of facilitate decision making. And of course, it made goal setting a lot easier. And it ultimately helped me understand that I needed to leave Kraken to kind of be who I, wanted to be and to be who I thought I was.
I love it. I love that you acknowledged it, you were aware of it, and you actually actively did something about it in terms of because going through an identity shift, I was calling it a crisis. I've stopped calling it a crisis now. I think it's like a revolution turning point in one's life, and you can either choose to do nothing about it or do something about it. And it sounds like you did exactly what I did as well. And the values come from within here, right? They come back to what's sitting inside of you and how do you crack
Mhm.
them open? And then how do you apply them once you've, kind of brought them up internally? How do you then, from an external perspective, how have you then given this, it's not even a rebrand, it's basically a transformation of the business you're in. How have you then applied those values into the business, or have you guys come up with a different, I mean, of course you've come up with a different set of values, but like how values influence decision making, decisiveness and fulfillment, etc. They're really important, not just from an individual, but they're important from a team perspective. So was that because you as a business went through an identity shift, right? Like you've gone through one, then you've come into a business that's going through a full identity shift, what you've created in this business you're in. How
Yeah,
did that play a key role? You're smiling a little bit, so I'm like,
yeah, I
hopefully.
might take the opportunity to answer in a slightly different way than you know, maybe as expected.
I love it. Go
Uh,
for it.
So the way the business works, there's the legacy real estate focused business, and we retained the CEO of that business, Blake Janover. He's become the chief commercial officer at DFDV, and he's still there, and he oversees that business. And then we brought on a few new team members who oversee the treasury strategy part of the business that are focused on growing SAL per share. And so essentially, Blake oversees the legacy part, and I check in every once in a while, but he's got it. I think he's doing a good job, and the quarterly results from Q3 look pretty good. So good job, Blake. On the on the treasury side, though, before we actually did this transaction, a few of us, the early team, sat down and we said this kind of funny goal, I think. We said we would like to have a company that reaches $1 billion valuation with 10 people. And that was like one of our goals. And so we actually wrote down the 10 roles that we thought we would need to achieve that. And then we wrote down the names next to those roles, the people we needed to get there. And then we went out and got them. And they were all people who we knew before. So, and almost all of them had worked at Kraken with me at one point in the past, right? So like I said, Kraken had gone from when I joined 20 something people to over 2,000, but that was over a
Nice.
very long, so 8.5 year time
Yeah.
spans. And a lot of people come and go. So, the crypto goes in cycles. The exchanges are subject to these cycles. So, there'll be a lot of hiring, there'll be a layoff in a bear market, et cetera. And we've seen this happen kind of over and over, right? So there's been thousands of people who have gone uh, through Kraken, and I was fortunate to be in a position where I could meet many, many of them and kind of see how they work. So, and not everybody came from me, right? Like the team said, "Oh yeah, what about this person or that person?" We put that list together. We went out and got them, and then actually, stock doesn't look like it right now, but on a fully diluted basis, we did hit $1 billion market cap uh, already, and so, for a couple of days, goal achieved with our, 10 or fewer kind
Current
of
team.
targeted team that we came in with. Now, about the culture piece, I'd worked with almost everybody on the team, and we've to some degree just like 1 degree of separation for everybody to have worked together, and for years, right? So. Um, I don't know. I feel like we're lucky. Like we inherited a lot of the good things about Kraken, and then we consciously made a few changes. So, for example, one of the changes that we made and that I remember kind of vividly is well, one of the benefits about how we've structured is many of the people on the team can ship something completely independently. So It's like one day I'll hear, oh, we signed a partnership for this thing. And I'm like, oh, what's that? And I think this is great. And I can do the same thing, right? So a bunch of us can do this same stuff where we can ship something on our own and you don't need permission or consent really from the rest of the team to do it. And sometimes we make mistakes. And I remember, I think we made a mistake one week and then we kind of, were embarrassed or looked bad. And then the next week we made another mistake and we were kind of embarrassed and looked bad. And I messaged or called Parker, who I think I mentioned before,
Yeah.
COO and Chief Investment Officer. And I said, hey, man, should we set up a process for this? Because we like miscommunicated or whatever here. We messed up this thing twice. And he says, um, no, I think that's going to slow us down. And we're going like 30 times faster than we've ever gone before right now with, what we were doing. And okay, yeah, 10% of the time we make a mistake. And we said, okay, well, as long as the mistakes don't, have some like terrible outcome, where we're careful in X, Y, and Z areas, then let's go as fast as we can in the others and let's stay as decentralized as we can, as flat as we can, and implement as little process as possible. And then, of course, I don't know, there's a bunch of examples of this. Like we had our first conversation about, oh, what do we do about expenses? Huh? What's the expense policy? And the legacy business had its own expense policy, and then we're talking about what to do with the treasury side of the business. What's the expense policy for the treasury side of the business? And we say, well, what about A, B, and C rule? We say, well, what if we did it like Netflix, where everybody just, says, well, would I make this decision if it was my own money? So yeah, that's easy. Ship it. So I think I'll stop my monologue now, but uh, I'd say we've been, I don't know, there's always kind of moments in a company where like you can see they're like pivotal where a culture gets defined, I'd
Yeah,
say. And I'd say
100%.
that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Sorry.
it, and I love that. And I've written a few things down that I want to chat to you about. But you're making it up as you go, aren't you? You're building as you go, and and if you slow it down too much, although I'm all about the pause and the ability to do so, like in those scaling up moments, you have to iterate, you have to make decisions on the fly, you have to like be able to bounce forward. And yeah, you were still grabbing things like the Netflix philosophy and things like that. So, and you were very clear that as long as you didn't fundamentally screw certain things up, you would keep going at that pace. So I think that also informs the values of a company as well when you're in its infancy or when you're re-identifying yourself as such, because I wrote down pace and speed, and there is a need for speed at times, but then it's also then the ability to have a value that actually slows it down so that you can make sure you're course correcting. And for me, that's that iteration or test and learn. I mean, obviously I'm not calling them values, for example, but awareness. Like you were clear you'd made mistakes 2 weeks in a row, and that you wanted to make sure, hang on, do we need to sense check this? Tell us a little bit about your decentralized model and how that allows such things as speed and pace, given the goals that you've got in the business.
Sorry. Yeah, there's this video that kind of stuck out to me. It's one of the How to Start a Startup series. I think it was uh it was like a bunch of people somehow associated with Y Combinator did this YouTube series, but it was like a class they taught at Stanford. Um, and it's like 10 years or more old now, but you can find it on YouTube. But Keith Rabios did one of these episodes, and I remember watching this. I don't know, it's been 10 years probably since I watched it, and I've watched it more than once since then. And I think he was COO at LinkedIn maybe, and he's telling the story about uh, how like scaling up a company, like how you are productive in a scale up, and how to identify people who are like enablers in business as it scales up. And his like comparison is like if you I don't know, if you have a bunch of people who are trying to ship something and the shipping is like firing a cannon,
Mm.
then You can have like you're constrained by your number of barrels or you're constrained by your ammunition. And he says what you commonly find in um, like startups or growth companies is you're constrained by your number of cannons, and that's like people who can like individually deliver something, and then the other people kind of rally around them to help make it happen. And so you want to maximize your like number of people who can actually independently deliver a thing, and then you probably want people around them who can support, but ideally target the people who can ship individually. And so I kind of this is like ingrained in me, I guess. That really hit me when I watched it. I was like, wow, that makes a ton of sense. So whenever I am, hiring somebody or evaluating or even looking at somebody who I've worked with before and saying, would I want to work with them again? That's one of the things that I look for. Um, are they going to be kind of pushing like their own new thing out? And the kind of more, we say permissionless a lot in crypto, but I mean permissionless in like a business culture. Like, will they not ask for permission to ship the thing? Or will they not look for somebody else to kind of support, but will instead ship something on their own? And I think if you maximize for those people, then and trust them and get out of the way and so on, you have to get really far out of the way, then you have really good outcomes. And I don't know, half the team, more than half the team at DFDV, and in my view, fits this description. And it's pretty awesome. And I mean, we set this out intentionally, when we started to try to find people who would do that. Um, and yeah, it's worked.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I had a question and I've just lost it. You said something, and I want to just quickly come back to crypto and I guess the future of what does the future look like in your mind for the category you're in, the industry you're in? Will it take over the world? Like we're in this crazy revolution as we speak at the moment. Everything is up for grabs, but like we've had other revolutions. What's your view on where your market is going?
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty bullish on it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be working in it. So, um, I think we're on like a mass adoption curve for crypto assets, and I think a bunch of the other technologies in the world that are kind of coming about are enabling or likely to be adopters, like uh, cryptographic assets or digital currencies make a lot of sense for like AI agents to use. So I think these two things go together pretty well. I also think uh, fiat currency is on the way out.
Yes.
This is going to take a little longer, I think, but um, I think will the world will eventually transition to one or a variety of sound digital monetary assets, and Bitcoin, I think, will be the basis of that. We picked Solana as our treasury asset because we're long-term believers in the growth of Solana. So I think Bitcoin's a great store of value. I think Solana is a great network to facilitate the use of that store of value and other um, currencies or assets. Um,
How
so
far? Oh,
I'm pretty bullish.
yeah, you are. And I want to come back to your bullish in a minute. But how far away do you think this transition is, though, Joseph? Like, do you think like we're talking 10 years away, 5 years away? Like, is it something like when you say currency will eventually diminish, if you like, that's a
Yeah,
massive.
I mean, it's probably a little longer time horizon. I don't know, let's say 10 years. I mean, Bitcoin launched, so, I mean, what is it, 16 years ago now? Um, and we've come very far already, right? Like there's Bitcoin ETFs, there's countries that hold Bitcoin on their balance sheets, there's central banks holding Bitcoin, there's a national reserve for it in the US. The president of the United States has businesses related to Bitcoin, or their kids have businesses related to Bitcoin. Like uh, there's been a lot of progress in the last was it, 16 years. So I'd love to see what the next 10 years look like. But I don't think adoption's slowing down. And it's kind of funny. I was at a dinner last night, and the dinner had a bunch of younger people, college students, and a little older university students, and they're all into crypto. I'm asking, how'd you guys get into crypto? And they say stuff like, well, back in middle school. And I'm like, whoa, it's like we got to the point where like people entering the workforce now, who will be making investment decisions or deciding whether they, want to put their trust into a fiat currency or into Bitcoin, have been encountering this stuff since they were, 9 years old. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't
I don't
it?
know, maybe middle school's a little older than that, 11 years old. Um, yeah, it's a pretty cool experience.
It's a new generation. Tell me a little bit about a couple more questions for you. You've used the term bullish a bit, and this
Yeah.
permissionless, which I absolutely love. CEO, it can be lonely at the top. Like, let's face it, like you can't be friends with everybody in your team. You might disagree with me on that, but you've got to make the decisions, quite often. And when you are very bullish in the goals you're setting and what you're doing, how do you manage all that yourself? Like, do you ever have days where, on the outside you're coming across as like, completely bullish, know exactly what you're doing, but on the inside you're like going, oh my gosh, like, I'm not quivering here, but you have your moments where it's like, man, this is tough. Like this is a really tough day today. Like, do you ever have those moments?
Yeah, but I have a pretty nice support system. So, I have a family and they're very supportive, I would say. And then kind of my co-founders here are, uh, when stuff's hard, like I just talk to them about it, right? There's no need to, well, at least I don't feel like a need to kind of hide it and say, oh, I need to be like the strong one or whatever here. No, I'm just you know, tell the rest of the team what's going on. I'm maybe transparent to a fault. I'm not sure, but I figure if I am kind of consistently uh, real, then it's going to have the same or better outcome than uh, if I decided, okay, I'm going to show no fear or whatever. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I'm not sure if it's the optimal strategy or not, but the alternative is very hard for me. So this is this is the path that I'm on. And then uh, I have a few other kind of resources, I guess. There are other CEOs that you can talk to who kind of understand your spot, and I think that's been great. And then yeah,
Yeah, I love that
I don't really feel alone.
no, that's
It's
cool.
not lonely at the top. I used to think that. I don't think that anymore.
Yeah, it's cool. I like that you brought that up because it's probably a choice if it's lonely at the top or not, right? But you've talked around, you've got a good support crew. You don't hold back on fear. It's like that. You don't have that no fear approach, like in terms of like, so your ability to be vulnerable and all of that. I think that is really what's required in leadership and the modern day CEO these days. I still think there is a lot of ego that stops us from potentially being more vulnerable and reaching out and so that's when it can get lonely. Last question. In terms of life work flow, you've got a family. How do you switch off? Like how do you ensure that you're keeping yourself fresh? Again, coming back to the ambition you have in this business, you seem like a very focused, real go-getter. There's got to be moments
Yeah.
and you said pre-show. It's I
Yeah,
can't.
it's tough. Yeah, I'd say kind of varies. So um my first core value that we haven't talked about and don't need to get into, but my first one is prioritize wellness. So what that typically means for me is I eat healthily. So I'm doing a good job on that. I eat the same stuff Brian Johnson eats, the guy who's going to live forever.
Oh, okay.
Um, and and then and I think that's been very helpful. I also almost always am going to sleep on time, which is also very helpful for, I don't know, kind of maintaining sanity. And then it ebbs and flows with, whether I'm appropriately connected with my family, I would say. But when I'm kind of in on top of my game, then I do a good job, and we're, playing board games or card games, or I'll have dinner together every day, etc. So, um, yeah, I feel like I got away from your question, but those were my
No, 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 you didn't because
thoughts touched onto them anyway.
yeah, you were talking, I was talking about how do you switch off, how do you stay, or how do you stay as a high performer? One, you did sound to when you're on top of your game, what does not on top of your game look like? And then how do you pull yourself out of it? Like you must become aware that I'm not on top of my game. Is that when like
Yeah.
sleep falls away, eating falls, like what is it?
Um, well, I think it kind of comes. So, I've been really focused on systems for maybe they're like habits and systems, or a habit, I guess, is part of the system. So, I find like I think a lot about when I'm in a kind of a good state. It's like Sunday morning and I'm rested or whatever, and I'm like, okay, it's like journal time or something. Then I'm thinking about. Uh, how can I like kind of trick myself into a system that works that is hard to break? And then uh you kind of it's like I think the book Thinking Fast and Slow, I
Oh
think
yeah.
gets into this quite a bit where there's like ways to kind of trick yourself when you're like being your best self or your conscious self. You can like trick your elephant or whatever later into doing what you think you ought to be doing. It's like when you set an alarm clock and then you want to put it on snooze or whatever. But if you've put your alarm clock across the room or something, then it's hard to not get up. So, I mean, that's like a silly example, but I spent a lot of time thinking about how to put those systems in place. And then once the system's in place, it's really hard to break it. So, uh, and then kind of one gets incrementally better at, or the systems get incrementally better over time, as long as they're not like a big relapse, right? So, um, yeah, when I'm in a good mental state, I work on the systems, and then the systems last, hopefully, or some percentage of the systems last. And it's like productivity or focus or relationships or whatever the goal is like kind of set on a higher tier kind of from then on. And it's hopefully hard to break it.
And so when you're in that survival or, like when you're not your best self, you can then lean further into the system or quickly go, well, hang on, what system isn't working right now? That's what I always see because it's that survival to, do you know what I mean? The system is
Yeah,
something
that's pretty
broken.
hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard, but
Yeah, but sometimes the systems don't break and it's always kind of a foundation. Like
yeah.
I've eaten the same thing that I eat every day for over a year now. And uh, that's a very hard system to break. It's like I don't want to eat this, or oh, I didn't maybe I didn't eat it on time, but I still ate it. And uh anyway, I don't know. It's okay if there's a step or two back, I would say, as long as you recover, but it's even better when the system's so hard to break that you can't do it.
Yeah. Gosh, I really want to go down a rabbit hole on this food thing, but I'm not going to. I'm going to let you get back to your after, but it just sounds like a fascinating story as well, separately. So yeah, I'd love yeah, maybe it's we can chat about that some other time. I think you were
Yeah,
about to say,
check out Blueprint Brian Johnson and see what he eats. And yeah, I'm a big fan of extreme consistency.
yeah. Fascinating. What would be one piece of advice you would give anybody who has no idea when it comes to crypto, what you're doing in terms of, the mission you're on and the goals you're to hit, given knowing that, full well in, your pretty well potential in 10 years' time, that the current currency as we know it is not going to is not going to be here any longer. Like we've got, like this younger generations, not even Gen Zs, we've got alphas, even younger generations that have been understand crypto more than, people like myself. Like, and I'm, saying that, I'm learning about it, but there's still a lot more for me to learn. What would you say to somebody who's got no idea?
Yeah, just try it. I think that's kind of the most magical experience. And you say, whoa, this is possible. And there's a lot of those like, whoa, this is possible kind of moments in crypto. So I suggest you have to buy it somehow. So there's probably a bunch of easy ways to buy crypto now, but one way is to sign up with one of the exchanges like Kraken, where I used to work. And you have to, what you can do on the centralized platforms is one thing, but what you can do when you get your assets into your own wallet is another. So I suggest buying one of these assets like Solana, um, and then creating your own wallet. So Soulflare is one of the wallets, Phantom is one of the wallets, and you withdraw your Solana from the place where you bought it into one of these wallets. You could probably just buy it in one of these wallets now too, Soulflare or say a Phantom. They both have ways to directly purchase. You just get a little bit, $5, $10, whatever, and then you can kind of see what's possible and how fast the system can move when there's no intermediary and it's a truly decentralized system. Uh, it's a pretty magical experience, I'd say.
Very cool. And any last advice as a CEO to another CEO?
Oh, geez. I'd say it's pretty specific to individuals if I was going to give advice. Maybe one that I gave recently was to another CEO who was having some trouble with like letting go, like a control thing. Um, and I said, there's this article that I frequently reference. It was in First Round Review, which is a online like free kind of publication, and I think the article is called Quantum Management. It's kind of a joke on the Schrodinger's cat thing, where if you look in to see what your team is doing, then you actually change the state of what your team is doing. Like you change the outcomes when you look, and you might have a better outcome, or you might have multiple outcomes if you don't look,
Yeah,
and that's really hard to do. Um, but if you put the right system in place, if you hired the right people, you don't have to look. And not looking is often the optimal choice.
I love it. So cool. So much great, rich insights on, revolutionizing currency, but also just being a CEO and a good human. And Joseph, thank you so much. How do we find out more about you? How do we find out more about your company?
Yeah, I'm pretty company focused. Yeah, dfdv.com is the website, dfdv.com. You can get a good idea of what we do on the kind of landing page there. And then we've got all of our metrics up on kind of how to evaluate the business and kind of the financial situation of the business. There's also a like an investor presentation that goes through kind of our thesis, why the business exists and why we think it's a good idea. So I check that out, dfdv.com.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a privilege talking to you. I'll let you get back to the rest of your evening if you like. And I know it's Monday. And thanks, Joseph. Much appreciate your time.
Thanks, B. Yeah, appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you.